Johnny Cash. What would make the king of rock and roll stand up in front of 8,000 people, walk to a stage he never planned to touch that night, and sing like his whole life depended on it? That's the question at the heart of a story people still talk about decades later. It's a story about music, yes, but really, it's about two famous men who were both, in their own ways, falling apart quietly behind the scenes. And one night, in front of a packed room and rolling cameras, they helped pull each other back together. Quick note before we dive in: what you're about to hear is a dramatized retelling built around a real event, a 1971 Gospel Music Awards night where Elvis Presley really was in the audience and really did get up to sing. The exact backstage conversations and inner thoughts here are imagined for storytelling, not verified history. But the emotional truth behind it, two men wrestling with fame, grief and faith, that part's very real. Now, let's get into it. Elvis Presley. Picture a room built for 6,000 people, packed with closer to 8,000. It's a Gospel Music Awards night in Nashville, the kind of event where the biggest stars in country and gospel come together to celebrate faith through song. And tucked into the third row, trying his best to be invisible, is Elvis. He's not there to perform. He's there as a guest. His manager made that very clear. No surprises, no extra shows, nothing that could throw off his packed touring schedule. Elvis is deep into his Las Vegas run at this point. 2 shows a night, every minute accounted for. He's supposed to smile, wave for the cameras, and sit quietly. But gospel music isn't just another gig to Elvis. It's the sound of his childhood. It's his mother's voice echoing through their small house. It's the church services where, for an hour or two, nobody cared how much money you had. To Elvis, gospel felt like one of the last honest things left in his life, untouched by fame, contracts, and the constant noise around him. So even though he wasn't supposed to sing that night, some part of him showed up hoping he might. Johnny Cash. Meanwhile, up on stage, Johnny Cash had just finished a set. He was in a different chapter of his life by then. Recently married, working hard to stay clean after years battling addiction. Gospel music had become something like a lifeline for him, a steady hand pulling him towards something bigger than the spotlight. As the applause faded, Johnny didn't walk off stage. He stood there a moment longer, looking out at the crowd like he had something on his mind he couldn't shake. "We've got someone special in the room tonight," he said, his deep voice rolling out over the auditorium. People shifted in their seats, trying to figure out who he meant. Before he was the king of rock and roll, Johnny went on, this man was a gospel singer. And I think it's a shame the world doesn't get to hear that side of him anymore. Down in the third row, Elvis felt his stomach drop. He knew exactly where this was headed. Elvis Presley is here with us tonight, folks. The room exploded. Every camera in the building swung toward him. Elvis smiled and gave a small wave, playing it cool on the outside. But his heart was pounding. This wasn't part of any plan, and he knew his manager would not be thrilled. Now here's the part that really lands. Johnny looked straight at him, no joking around anymore, no showman's grin, and said something like this: "Elvis, I'm gonna dare you, brother. Come up here and remind us why gospel music matters. Sing the way you used to sing in church, before any of this fame ever touched you. Sing it for your mama, for your mama." That line hit different. Elvis's mother, Gladys, had passed away back in 1958, 13 years earlier, and the grief had never really left him. She was the one who filled their home with hymns. She was the one who taught him that no matter how big he got, gospel was where the truth still lived. The walk to the stage. For a second, the whole room seemed to hold its breath. Would he do it? Would the king of rock and roll actually get up and sing gospel in front of a live audience and television cameras? Something he hadn't really done in public in years. Part of him wanted to stay in his seat. Staying seated was safe. Staying seated protected the polished Vegas image everybody expected. But another part of him, the part fame hadn't managed to bury, was already standing up. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause as Elvis walked down the aisle toward the stage. Every step felt heavier than the last. He hadn't sung gospel like this, in front of people, since he'd lost his mother. Every time he'd tried before, it felt like poking at a wound that hadn't healed. Johnny met him at the edge of the stage and reached down to help him up. And in that instant, at least as the story goes, you could see something pass between them. Two men who both, in their own ways, were barely holding it together. The song. When Elvis got to the microphone, he waved off the house band. No orchestra, no backup, nothing polished. "If I'm gonna do this," he said, his voice low, almost shaking, "I'm gonna do it the way my mama taught me. Just voice, just faith." Then he closed his eyes and started singing Amazing Grace. This wasn't the Vegas showman anymore. This wasn't a guy hitting every note perfectly for the cameras. His voice cracked on the very first line. It trembled on the second, and he kept going anyway. Off to the side, Johnny Cash stood watching, and within half a minute, tears were running down his face. He'd expected something powerful, sure, but not this. This was a man singing through years of buried grief, using the one language that felt strong enough to hold it. By the middle of the song, something shifted. Elvis's voice steadied. The shaking eased. It was like the song itself was helping him carry something he'd been carrying alone for 13 years. Johnny couldn't stay on the sidelines. He walked over, stood beside Elvis, and joined in, his low, steady voice supporting Elvis's higher one. Together, they made a sound that was broken and beautiful at the same time. And on the final verse, Elvis opened his eyes and turned to look directly at Johnny. Not at the crowd, not at the cameras, at his friend. Everyone in that room understood, without anyone saying a word, that this had become something bigger than a performance. It was one hurting man reaching out to another. After the music stopped, when the song ended, nobody clapped right away. For several seconds, the whole auditorium just sat there in silence, like applause would have felt too small for what they'd just watched. Then, slowly, people started to rise from their seats. Not cheering, just standing, witnessing. Johnny's face was soaked with tears, his shoulders shaking. Elvis pulled him into a hug, and Johnny nearly collapsed into it, like something he'd been holding onto for years had finally let go. "Thank you for saving my life tonight," Johnny is said to have whispered. "You saved mine, brother," Elvis answered. "You dared me to remember who I am." There they stood, two of the most famous men in music at the time, holding each other up in front of thousands of people who understood they were watching something real, not staged. Then Johnny's wife, June Carter, stepped onto the stage, wrapped her arms around her husband, and Johnny buried his face in her shoulder. Elvis watched them for a moment, and something in him shifted too. The simple, unguarded way she loved her husband through his hardest moments, without shame, without trying to fix him in public. Elvis turned back to the microphone, his voice still rough. "I want to thank Johnny for reminding me tonight that some things are bigger than fame," he said. "My mama used to tell me never to forget where I came from, or that God gave me this voice for a reason. I think I forgot that for a while. Tonight, Johnny helped me remember." Then, slower applause began. Heavy, careful, like the crowd was afraid to break the moment. What came after? The story goes that afterward, Elvis and Johnny sat together backstage for a long while, mostly in silence. When Johnny finally spoke, he admitted he'd almost backed out of daring Elvis at all. "Why didn't you?" Elvis reportedly asked. "Because I saw myself in you out there," Johnny said. "A man drowning in his own success. I thought, if I can get you to really sing gospel again, maybe it reminds both of us we're more than what everybody expects us to be." Whether every word of that exchange happened exactly like that, we can't say for certain. Nobody recorded the dressing room that night. But what we do know is this: that gospel performance really happened. Cameras really were rolling, and Elvis really did sing Amazing Grace that evening in a way that moved the room to tears. Gospel music remained a deeply personal thread, running through Elvis's life and catalog for the rest of his career, and Johnny Cash spent the following decades speaking openly about how his faith helped carry him through his fight with addiction. Why it still matters. Here's the thing about this story that keeps people coming back to it. It's not really about two music legends. It's about what happens when someone we admire lets the mask slip, just for a moment, and shows us they're human too. Elvis wasn't just the king of rock and roll that night. He was a grieving son who missed his mom. Johnny Cash wasn't just a country legend. He was a man white-knuckling his way through recovery, looking for something solid to hold on to. And gospel music, in that moment, became the bridge between them. That's the part worth taking with you. Whatever fame looks like in your own life, your job, your image, the version of yourself you show the world, there's usually a quieter, more honest version underneath it. Sometimes it takes someone brave enough to dare you, gently, to let that version show. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Who in your life has ever dared you to be more honest, more real, more yourself? And did you take them up on it? If this story hit you the way it hit me, do me a favor. Drop a like, leave a comment telling me your thoughts, and share it with somebody who still believes a good song can heal something 1,000 words can't. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.